Hello everyone. Okay, so we are back to talk some more about Neon Flux's The Game of Death project. Now, for the early part of this year, things had been relatively quiet, in terms of updates and things. But very recently, they've started gearing back up. They had the initial announcement, like, we've been quiet for a while, but we've been quietly working away and building and refining. And they're back in full flow now. Of course, we had some wonderful things coming out leading up to the end of last year, but they've finally got things rolling again. And they've been releasing a lot of stuff on their members page. I'm fortunate enough to be part of their membership for their YouTube channel, and they've released some really, really great stuff on there. And it's just so fascinating to see how things are developing and coming along and coming along. Very recently, they released a 6 minute video just with various, proof of concept, for lack of a better term. They call them progress cuts, if that makes sense. They always are quick to point out that this isn't what the finished product's going to look like, of course. But we're seeing some brilliant, brilliant stuff. Again, just the way that everything's looking, it looks right, for lack of a better term. It looks consistent with what Bruce shot back in '72. And even just little things like the way that Nora Meow looks, she looks fantastic. But even some of these shots of them when they're going through the airport, they've got Bruce in that three-piece suit that he wears in Enter the Dragon. And he looks excellent. He looks so good. I really love the way they've made, shall we say, the way they've rendered him, for lack of a better term. Yeah, he looks brilliant. And there's been like various things in previous, like, you can see like the development. They've tried different variations, but it really looks like they've finally got the look down with that three-piece suit on. He looks excellent. And we've finally got some glimpses of, the stuff that's been talked about that was never filmed. So the battle in the courtyard against the Karataka, and then of course against Wang In Shik, and then against Taki Kimura. And that was always going to be the big question of what are the fight scenes going to look like. A lot of people have correctly pointed out, like, it's okay to show static shots, for lack of a better term, but when we've got full flowing movement and, like, how are we going to go about capturing that? And what we've seen recently, we've had the various members only videos, but yesterday they've put up for, public general viewing another, like, update trailer, and we've got some great stuff in there, and we've finally got, shots of what the action is going to look like. I mean, of course, this is all still in the developmental stage. Neon Flux, they have got a long roadmap planned out. It's by no means finished or close to finish. It's going to be a process of refining and developing and building and building. But what they've been able to accomplish so far, it's incredible. They are doing incredible work. There's no denying that. However you feel about AI, and again, respect to everybody's opinion, everyone's got their own take on it. For me, I'm just excited about it, when it's used in the right way. And I think this is a fine example. There's the debate about fully AI generated movies and whether they should become part of the norm. I don't know. But I'm all for this because this is a film that should have existed, that was intended to exist. You know, Bruce had a goal in mind that he was working towards. He had a vision for a project, and obviously they were well into filming, and then they were well into getting everything up and running again after Enter the Dragon was done. But then obviously tragedy struck. So this is one of those projects. It has merit to it. Like like for example, here's the distinction. I wouldn't be in favour of a whole slew of more Bruce Lee movies through AI. I wouldn't be for that at all. I'm for this being made because the Game of Death should have existed, and it was well on the way towards existing. So this, for me, it's basically getting it over the finish line, especially after what I've said it time and again. The 78 thing that was put out by Golden Harvest was a travesty. I don't like that film at all. You know, the more that time's gone on, and when I sat down initially to watch it, I was going into it uneducated. Because it was only after I watched that and I kind of looked more and more into it, then I found out about, this wasn't even close to what Bruce Lee wanted to do. Who's Billy Law? You know? So yeah, it does get me angry thinking about it. Because what's always maddening to me, and I won't spend too long on this, but all I'll say is they had that 40 minutes of usable footage there, right? And I refuse. They always say there was no completed script. We don't know, but you'd have been able to put certain pieces together. And clearly, Bruce's notes were there. You just had to go in his office, and apparently they were in the filing cabinet in a folder, helpfully labelled "The Game of Death." Thank you to John Little for finally, you know, putting it all together. But apparently, that was beyond the people who were in Golden Harvest at the time. Apparently, although they could summon footage to use in the documentary at the drop of a hat. But the point I was ultimately going to make is, it would have been more straightforward to have used that footage and have just basically used the notes as best they could and assemble, you know, like the rest of it together and film the missing, you know, sequences. Like, okay, we were going to do the battle with Wang Zhongli, we were going to do a battle with Taki Kimura, we were going to do a big battle in the courtyard with, obviously, Bolo was going to be the captain of the guard, we were going to have Lam Ying and Yunhua and Wu Nan and a couple of the others. You could have got Jackie in there, you could have got Yun Biao and all of those guys to make up the numbers. And, you know, there would have been, fair enough, yeah. There was no finalised script, so there would have been guesswork, absolutely. But you could have done a pretty close approximation, and it would have been simpler, it would have been cheaper as well, because all of this elaborate stuff that they conjure up for the 78 film, which is ultimately trash, it was just a wasted effort. It was a waste of effort, waste of time, waste of resources. Whereas you could have done something that would have been a closer approximation to Bruce's vision, something that everyone would have looked at, you know, everyone would have responded to, and would have been far less exploitative. I mean, there you go. They didn't miss a chance to use the funeral footage again, did they? And still to this day, that scene where they go and dig up the grave, I don't know what that was. And again, then we have the shot of them smashing the bust of Bruce's face, and you're like, what are they doing? but it's maddening. So we'll move swiftly on back to the positive stuff. What Neon Flux is cooking up, and what they've just released yesterday, it's incredible. And let's talk a little bit about, let's get into some specifics. Obviously, it's there to watch, but I will link it in the description if you haven't seen it already. So we get segments of these different levels. So we get shots of the battle in the courtyard, shots of the fight, of them fighting against Wang and Shik, and then against Taki Kimura. Now, obviously, you can see it's not perfect yet, but what they've been able to do so far is incredible. So you can see, and this is why it's so good that they're taking as much time as they are with it, to like fully refine it, go back through it with fine-tooth combs. So there was one glaring thing for me in this, and it's early on when they're in the courtyard battle, and it's, you get little segments. You get a segment of Carter Wong fighting, you get a segment of Bruce, you get a segment of Bob Wall, and then obviously you get a segment of James Chen and then Che Yuan. Now the James Chen segment, as it gets to the end of it, after he's finished his exchange with two of the Karataka, he does a little movement, but when you go back and watch it, you can see the imperfection in the AI, because basically the body twists one way and the head twists another way. So little things like that, that's why it's important to take your time and go back. And so obviously that's not going to be the finished product, of course, but it's a quick thing, but it's when you go back and rewatch, you think, right, okay. Now that for me was the most glaring thing in the whole thing, so that's pretty good going. I want to take the time to point out one specific thing as well from that courtyard battle. Following on from this, there's a little chunk, maybe just shy of 10 seconds, where you've got James Chen and Che Yuan fighting together against the Karataka, and we get this wonderful sweeping shot. There's so much action going on in the frame, and I even commented on it in the comments section for the video, but it's one of the most awesome shots I've ever seen. Genuinely, just the way they've rendered it and the way they've created it, because you've got like a swooping camera shot, and you've got basically it's happening from all angles, and you've got James Chen and Che Yuan like back to back. But this is the thing again. We all love Bruce. We all do. That's why we're here. I love James Chen. I really do. And whenever I just get so excited whenever he shows up in stuff, because over the past few years, and if you've seen some of the videos on the channel, you can probably put this together. I've been going back and building up like my golden harvest with a tremendous amount of help from Eureka Video, Arrow Video, 88 Films, all of those wonderful Blu-ray boutique labels. Thank you. I couldn't have done it without you. And again, help from George Clark at Invincible Asia. But I just, because James Chen's all over that, isn't he? Because obviously at the beginning of the 70s, he was set to be one of their main stars. Obviously, he was in the Invincible 8. And then, of course, he shows up in Vengeance of a Snow Girl. And then, of course, Big Boss and Fist of Fury, and the rest is history. But then as we get into the 80s, when Jackie Chan and Sammo Hung and Yuen Biao were there doing their thing, James Chen's always there. He keeps showing up in stuff, and it's great. Like, he's in the 3 Lucky Stars films, he's in Yes Madam, he's in Right and Wrongs, he's in Dragons Forever. And again, sometimes he's more prominent. Like, for example, he's like the big mob boss in Yes Madam. And then sometimes, like, as you say, at the beginning of Dragons Forever, he's there for like a minute and then he's out of there. I just get so happy whenever he shows. Now, from what I understand, obviously, he's you know, when you hear from people in the know, like people like Bay Logan, when they've, you know, talked about their experiences in Hong Kong with the film stars. Obviously, Bay Logan, someone who has met James Chen, but from what we understand, he's a very private person and not someone who was really interested in the celebrity fame side of things. So that's why he's never really done interviews or anything, which is a damn shame because it would be lovely to hear what he has to say. But again, I accept that. You know, for some people, it's just work, isn't it? It's just a job, which is fair enough. You know, but I love James Chen, so getting to see all of the good stuff that he's been given to do in this. I mean, that's one of the things I would have done, by the way, if I was Golden Harvest. I would have got James Chen back and said, look, obviously we're going to go and fill in the blanks with this. Obviously we're going to get a double sorted stand-in for Bruce, but we want to give you more of a focus. Ironically, again, I'm sorry this might annoy a few people, but almost a role reversal of what happened in The Big Boss. Now, obviously, yeah, Bruce Lee's character Hai Chen would have always been the main character, that's fine. But I would have just given a lot more screen time to James Chen. Like, for example, that would have been a perfect thing they could have done in that big courtyard battle where there's so much going on. Like, you could have had, like, Hai Chen flying around in the background. I mean, he's in that yellow tracksuit, so no one's going to miss him. They're going to know where to look. But in terms of, like, if we're focusing on specific characters, yeah, I would have let James Chen, give more to James Chen. And again, I would have, just to sweeten the deal, because from what we see of the 40 minutes, he was the legitimate co-star. You know, I mean, next to Bruce, he's, you know, he makes it to the end. I mean, Che Yuan technically does as well, but, you know, we always understand that he's Che Yuan's second fiddle to James Chen's character, which is by design. But yeah, I would have done it as well in terms of like the billing of it. I'd have, again, this might be sacrilegious to say, so I'm sorry. But I would have done the same thing they did with Enter the Dragon, you know, when it comes up with Bruce Lee's and John Saxon's name together. I would have done the same thing. Bruce Lee, James Chen in the Game of Death. That would have been great. I just love the guy. I really do. And from what you see of him in the 40 minutes as well, he's great. He's charming as all hell. He's that sleazy, like, he's that duplicitous, like, double-crossing, backstabbing character that you just, again, one of the moments as well in the 40 minutes that I love as well, you know, after Bruce has just finished off Danny Nasanto, and then obviously Che Yuan wanders up to him and pats him on the arm, and then he marches off up the stairs. When James Chen wanders over to him, and Bruce goes to say something, and James Chen just simply after you. It's just, honestly, I love the man. I really do. But getting to see him being given some interesting stuff to do in this project that Neon Flux is working on. But you got to see it. This shot, this like maybe 8 seconds of Che Yuan and James Chen battling the Karataka, it's great. And then, of course, following on from that, we get to see inside the pagoda with them facing off against Wang In-shik and Taki Kimura. And what they've been able to do so far, because obviously we know from Bruce's notes that Wang In-shik is... And I like the way Neon Flux has referred to him as the kicking master. Some of the exchanges are really cool. But then when we get to Taki Kimura and we're doing the praying mantis, what they've been able to do, the thought that they've put into it, they're not just doing generic, strikes. Like, you can see the detail that's been put into Taki Kimura's movements. It's very, very cool. Also, again, I've got to say, I said it as much I commented as much. There was always the question of, like, what order are they going to be picked off in? So obviously we've got Bruce, James Chen, obviously Che Yuan, and then we've got Carter Wong and Bob Wall. Now, they were doing the initial when they initially did the poll. Like, who do you want to be the final member of the team? Do you want it to be Bob Wall or do you want it to be Tony Lau? Or is it Lau Wings? His alternative name, isn't it? Now, I really like Tony Lau, but obviously we know that his name was ultimately crossed out, and obviously they were looking, according to the James Flower Final Game of Death documentary, who's going to be replaced with a white American fighter. Now, we know it's not going to be Chuck Norris, because, again, I won't get into it, respect for the dead, you know, we're sorry he's gone, but we know after he turned down the opportunity to be in Enter the Dragon, following on from, you know, like, that was his words, didn't it? He didn't want to lose again. Fair enough, fair enough. We know it's not going to be, you know, we know it's not going to be Bob Baker, because I think Bob Baker got into the legal trouble with his drug smuggling around this time. Okay. I'm just thinking, and also, we know for definite it's not going to be Joe Lewis by this point. So, yeah, I think by process of elimination, yeah, it's going to be Bob Wall, isn't it? Now, listen, I don't particularly like Bob Wall, but I voted for him because I wanted him to be the cannon fodder of the group. And sure enough, he's the first one to go. So that's a decision I can get behind. So I just hope. I mean, he survives the courtyard fight, we know. And then he does make it into the pagoda. We see a little clip of him fighting Wong in shit. I hope he gets absolutely eviscerated. And he's just left there laying in a heap. Yeah. But yeah, so they made the right choice. So Carter Wong, he makes it onto the second level, and obviously he's going to meet his end against Taki Kimura, however that transpires. But it's just so, honestly, this is great. It's brilliant. I'm really, really loving the hell out of what I'm seeing. Of course, like you said, there's still little imperfections that, you know, are going to be ironed out. Obviously, it's a progress cut, so don't worry. In the final product, James Chen's head's not going to be spinning one way and his body's going to be spinning another way. Don't worry, it's not going to happen. But it's just that process of refinement. And special mention as well, the music in this one. They have done a reworking of the music from Bruce Lee and G.O.D., the art port assembly of basically there's track on there, the floor of the hall of the unknown, floor of the unknown, and basically it's like a, you know, a rock version for lack of a better term of John Barry's Game of Death score. It's cool, it really is cool. That's another thing as well, the music's that they've been creating for this has been consistently great. I mean, I really like, for me, in my head, the Game of Death theme for Bruce's is the Joseph Koo music that Arrow used for the opening titles of their final Game of Death. That is, for me, the Game of Death theme. And they have done that in some of their videos, so I hope that makes it into the final thing. But it's honestly just, it's brilliant, and I'm so glad that they're continuing with this, and I'm so glad it's getting a lot of support. I'm proud to be part of their membership, I really am. And I really hope that as time goes on that it gets some kind of endorsement or support from Shannon Lee and the Bruce Lee Enterprises, because it absolutely deserves it. And I hope that later on down the line, when we get a finished piece, I hope it's been, however they decide to make it available, you know, I would love it's a lot to hope for. I'd love for it to get a Blu-ray release. And again, surely there's a class act, by the way. Neon Flux, they always maintained anything any proceeds that would come from it, you know, they'd make every effort to share it with the families and surviving, you know, of the original people who were involved. And of course, I'm sure proceeds could go towards the Bruce Lee Foundation as well. Like, there's a way that everybody could benefit from this and everybody wins. And you can see that this really is coming from a good place. As I've said time and again, you can see that this has been made by people who love Bruce and want to do right by his legacy. But yeah, I will link the trailer in the description. Go check it out if you haven't already. If you've seen it, please feel free to share your thoughts. I'd love to hear them, and just so excited for what's coming next. And thank you everybody for indulging me. I'll see you in the next one. Thank you. Bye bye.